Well, I'm Larry Myers. I'm the executive director of the Platform Republicans PAC. We're the hosts of the meeting tonight. We appreciate candidates coming on and being with us tonight, and we appreciate the State Central Committee members and any other interested parties that are tuning in. We expect to have a vigorous forum, get to know these candidates, and it'll help those who are on the Central Committee to be informed voters. We always like to start our meetings with prayer. We think that's appropriate among our PAC. And so nobody volunteered when I asked for volunteers. So I'm going to go ahead and open us with a word of prayer. So if you'll all join me. Father in heaven, we bow our heads and give thanks that we can come together as members of the community here in Utah, as Republicans and other citizens who are concerned about our state and about our future. We're grateful for candidates who are willing to run and give their time and their energy. We're grateful for those who serve in these volunteer positions to help select candidates and to lead the party and to be leaders in the community. Give us guidance and inspiration. Help us to have a successful event tonight as we acknowledge thy hand and our gratitude to thee in all things. And this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. Thank you, everyone, for again joining us. As I mentioned, I'm Larry Myers. I'm the executive director of the Platform Republicans PAC. That's the group that's sponsoring the meeting tonight. We're a PAC that raises money for legislative candidates in the Republican Party who are firmly committed to the values and the principles of the Utah Republican Party platform. And so part of our mission is just try to help educate and make sure voters have the opportunity to get to know our candidates in various levels. And we've got the state treasurer candidates tonight who are going to be selected Saturday morning by the Republican State Central Committee. So I want to welcome each of the candidates. The ones that we have in our first hour and a half that were invited are Chadwick Fairbanks, Mike Green, Bill Lyman, Tawnee McCay, and Brian Zehnder. And I know that we've got at least 3 of them with us that checked in right as we were starting the meeting. I see Chadwick now, welcome. There's Chadwick. And I'm not sure if Mike Green is going to be able to join us. He told me previously that he is out on a military assignment and that he may not be available due to his assignment. But he said he would be back Saturday morning. So we'll see Mike Saturday morning if we don't see him tonight here on the meeting. So welcome. The way we're going to go is I'm going to have each of the candidates that are with us in this first session take up to 3 minutes to introduce themselves. And this is their time to tell us what they want about themselves so that we can get to know them a little bit. And then we will start with question and answer. And as a general rule, the question and answer will be, we'll have a question. Each of the candidates can answer it. I'll rotate order and we'll do 1 minute answers. So I ask the candidates to keep it fairly succinct. If you need a little more time, I'm flexible, but let's not drag on too long. We want to get as much content as we can in and give everybody a fair chance. So I'm just going to start in alphabetical order. We'll start with Chadwick Fairbanks. And Chad, welcome. Why don't you give us your introduction?
All right, am I unmuted now? All right, thanks, Larry. Awesome. So my name is Chadwick Fairbanks, and I am currently the chairman of the Utah Republican Veterans Caucus that I helped found in 2018. So like many of you on the Central Committee, that makes me a member of the State Central Committee as well as the State Executive Committee. I have been since 2018. I'm also the founder of Park City Concierge, small business in Park City. We provide property management, luxury transportation, but I do a whole lot of real estate investment in Utah and Arizona. So I'm an astute investor that's heavily dialed into the real estate market and all the markets in general. I'm a proponent of and student of Austrian economics and sound money principles. I'm also a U.S. Army veteran and former civilian contractor to the National Security Agency, holding high-level top secret security clearances and fluent in Persian Farsi. So I'm very well read, skilled, and trained in a lot of issues that affect the sovereign state of Utah when it comes to economics, international geopolitics, state sovereignty issues. I'm dedicated to godly, conservative, Republican governance in the vein that the founders always intended. which I believe is very apropos, given that this evening is being hosted by the Platform Republicans PAC. I know Larry and the crew are very dedicated to ensuring that the GOP platform is upheld by Republicans in the state of Utah. So I applaud that mission, and I thank you guys for hosting us tonight. Real quick, I wanted just to hit on the role of treasurer. I know a lot of my candidates have been making the issue more convoluted and obfuscated than it really is. So Utah State Law Title 67, Chapter 4 basically defines the role of the treasurer. It's highly dictated by state law. The treasurer basically has his job cut out for him, essentially. He's basically told what to do. It's the state legislature that passes the spending bills, okay? And then the executive agencies issue warrants to the treasurer's office that the treasurer pays out on. It's all very rote and ritual. It's not something that requires an MBA or a CPA or a PhD, et cetera, et cetera. It's a highly governed position. The treasurer invests all the funds that are in his custody according to the Money Management Act, again, dictated by the legislature. So the treasurer is mostly a figurehead position. I know my opponents who want to tout their CPA resumes will say otherwise, but the treasurer is basically involved in management, public relations, helping the governor assist him in setting economic policy. So really the most important attribute of the treasurer or the candidate as a statewide elected officer is that this person be a conservative Republican, which I clearly am. And I've got the receipts to show that, right? So when it comes to voting records, there's only 2 candidates out of the 10 that have voting records. That's myself and Dr. Z there that's on the call. He's right next to me in my window. I don't know if our windows are all the same, the tiles. But in the context of Platform Republicans, Mr. Zehnder's voting record as a 2018 state senator was basically with the Democrats. So when it comes to his conservative Republican chops, you should probably just log off the call right now, because voting with the platform is not what his record shows, and you can go to adambrown.info to get all that. So as a member of the State Central Committee, I have a staunch voting record with the conservatives, with Keep My Voice. I'm definitely a nationalist, an anti-globalist, and the receipts to back that up, the voting record to back that up. And I think that's a very important thing to consider as fellow Central Committee members in choosing the 3 names that we need to send to the governor. I'm against all forms of taxation. I was against the tax referendum in 2019. And as treasurer, I will focus on securing the public lands, and putting more money into the treasury, more resources into the treasury. I'll focus more on gold and silver and sound money, like some of the other states like Texas and Ohio are doing for their retirement funds. And I will put real estate wealth creation at the forefront of the financial education. Those were some of the things that I'll focus on as state treasurer. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chadwick. We appreciate you joining us. And you went a little bit over, so I'll caution other candidates. No, that's okay. We're going to have lots of time to everybody.
I didn't see a timer. I was hoping to see a timer. I apologize.
I know. I've got my phone here, but it's kind of hard to.
Okay.
So it's a warning. We'll use like the yellow.
Fair enough.
No, you're fantastic. I'm going to go to, I don't think a candidate, Mike Green, is with us yet, if he's going to be able to join us tonight. So next on my alphabetical list is Phil Lyman. Welcome, Phil. You can unmute and we'll pass the baton to you here.
Okay. I'm trying to start my timer here. All right, well, thank you so much. Thank you, Brad. We got the timer, it's up there. And Brad, it looks like your beard is longer than I remembered it. I don't know if there's like highlights or something, or it just grows really fast. But I just want to say thank you, first of all, to the Platform Republican PAC and for what you guys stand for, and for doing this and pulling up the candidates to hear from them. I've talked to a lot of you before. You kind of know where I stand on some of these issues. But anyway, my name is Phil Lyman. a little bit of my background. I was a county commissioner in San Juan County for 8 years. And during that time, I learned quite a bit about, I guess, how the federal government imposes their presence on these smaller counties, those counties that maybe can't put up a good defense on their own and that need the help of the state. I was disappointed on many occasions that when it looked like we had all of the passion and all of the energy at the county level, the state seemed to have all of the resources and a real reluctance to engage on some of the issues that I thought were really important. I've seen my county go from being one of from the second most valuable in terms of centrally assessed properties to one of the least valuable in terms of centrally assessed properties, and a lot of that because of federal policies. So as I look at the state of Utah, I've talked about this before, that we look at the Sitla lands, 1.7 million acres of Sitla lands, and say what a great asset that is. I look at the 35 million acres of federal land and say that's also a great asset to Utah. And in 1896, when we became a state, that was put inside this boundary that we call the state of Utah, and we should do more with that than what we're doing. In that vein, everything that I stand for is about state sovereignty and individual liberties and freedoms and preserving those things. Alexander Hamilton said that state legislators and legislatures should be not only vigilant, but jealous and suspicious guardians of the rights of the people against federal encroachment. And so that kind of prompted me, those kinds of feelings prompted me to run for the state legislature. And I've been on the state legislature now for 3 sessions. And in terms of a voting record, I do have a voting record, and anyone's welcome to go and look at that. I guess bottom line, kind of in closing, I feel like state of Utah could do so much more. I feel like they could step in between the feds and the people and help preserve the liberties. And I think in the treasurer's office is a really great position to assert some of those values. So I'm going to wrap up because I'm almost to my 3 minutes, and look forward to answering questions.
All right, thank you, Phil. Appreciate you being with us. Next up, we're going to go to Tawnee McCay. Tawnee's here with us, and we welcome her, and we'll turn the time over to her for introduction.
All right, great. I just wanted to thank the Platform Republicans. I think that this is a really great forum to be able to get to know all of the different candidates. And so thank you, and especially Larry. I'll make sure my timer gets turned on. So my background is in finance. I have a master's in business administration from Utah State University, and my emphasis was financial planning. And right after I got done with my master's, and actually while I was working on it, I was the director of the Family Life Center up in Logan, where we did housing and financial counseling. We were a HUD approved and also got funding from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and had won awards as a counseling center. I also taught classes up at Utah State as an adjunct faculty. I taught retirement planning and investing classes, and really enjoyed that. And since then, I've also taught at community colleges, and loved that. I've also done a lot of financial planning through the years. When we moved down to Salt Lake, I worked at Dentist Advisors, where it was kind of cool because we had a niche where we helped dentists. Most of them had, over 10 million assets under management. We would also help them transfer, if they were selling their practice, we would help them evaluate it, and also go into their office and find smarter ways to do things, streamline their business to save them money. And so I was also Mia Love's campaign treasurer for 3 years until she was successful in getting elected. And I've also helped a lot on a lot of different Republican campaigns over the years, specifically helping state legislators and others set up their financial accounting and do the reporting to the state, which I've noticed some people on here haven't done that yet. So I've also volunteered with the Salt Lake County Republican Party, and have been very active. We've attended Lincoln Day dinners and things for 10 years. And we love the party and the platform. I think it is the best economic policy, and it's what lifts people in Utah and all across the country. I also was able, I serve on the Riverton City Council, where we manage the city's $60 million budget. And I've really enjoyed that. I'm kind of known at the city as being the budget hawk. I feel like it's easy for our staff to want to increase fees for residents. For example, this year, our sanitation fees have gone up. And they were like, okay, let's pass it on to the residents. But then I reminded them, do you remember we paid off this bond for a water tank? And so that expense has gone down, and we've had an increase in sales tax revenue this year, even with the pandemic. And so in the last 4 years, we've been able to not increase the fees for our residents anytime. So I'm proud of that. I've also got to know David Damption in working on the Women in the Money Conference. I sit on the advisory board for that and really enjoy it. And yeah, that's a little bit about my background, and I would love to serve in this position. And that's all. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for introducing yourself. And we've got one more to go to. The man showing is Dr. Z, Brian Zehnder. We welcome you, and you're up next, Brian.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all. Really appreciate your service to the Central community. As you know, we're here to choose a treasurer for the state of Utah. Will it be a CPA, attorney, a banker? You should choose someone who treasures the value of a penny, of transparent leadership, and the power of conservative principles. So first, let's talk about finance. I've spent my career investing and managing funds with prudence. For example, in the Great Recession of 2018, as an entrepreneur in business with a strong balance sheet, we built and fully leased the very first medical office building in Magna, a multi-million-dollar stimulus package when jobs were scarce. We pinched pennies, controlled risk, and borrowed wisely. Having skin in the game matters. Second, let's talk about leadership. As a CEO in healthcare, former senator, and nonprofit executive, I build relationships, encourage, and invest in others. Your success matters to me. I've taken notes from all my phone calls with people over the phone, and I'm ready to go to work. Being on the receiving end as a state senator, the treasurer shared key insights during my time on the Hill. Thus, giving insight to maintain our AAA bond rating is vital as our treasurer. Now, the power of conservative principles. I fully support the platform. I even took the quiz this afternoon on the platform for Republicans to see how I did. I do believe in limited taxation and know that the power to tax is also the power to control. I am pleased that I received a 100% scorecard as a friend of the taxpayer by the Utah Taxpayers Association as a senator in 2018. I believe in a God-given work ethic, not government handouts that encourage people to sit home unemployed. And I do not believe that you can run an economy based on modern monetary theory and a runaway printing press. Getting to know you has been heartwarming, similar to 2018, when delegates elected me as state senator and chose me twice again to be on the ticket for our party. I am proud to say that I have never used the signature path in elections. So in summary, I know business, I know government, and you deserve a proven leader who knows both. Thank you.
All right, Brian, thank you. Good to get to know you and each of these candidates who are with us on this first session. So the next phase, we're going to start question and answers. I'm going to let any members of our PAC board of directors to ask questions if they want as the sponsors. So everyone knows our PAC board of directors is Republicans from across the state. We have representatives from Cache County down to my county, Washington County in the south. Some of the board members have been involved in the party for many years as either state party officers, county party officers, delegates, candidates, and campaign workers. So we have a really diverse board, both men and women. I think, Lowell, you were going to start us off with a question. I've got Lowell Nelson from Utah County, and Lowell will ask the question, then we'll have each of the candidates answer. We'll go in the order of Phil, Tawny, Brian, and Chadwick on this question or this answer, 1 minute each. So go ahead, Lowell.
Thank you, Larry. This is Lowell Nelson. My question relates to the value of the money that's in the Treasury. As you know, with the $1 trillion bailouts and aid packages and so forth, the value of the dollar, the Federal Reserve note, is deteriorating. And so what can you do as treasurer of the state of Utah? What investments can you make? What legislative latitude do you have to invest in real estate or commodities or other instruments so that we retain the value of the dollars in the Treasury? Thank you.
Okay, that's a really, really great question, and it would have a really big answer. So I'm going to try to do it in a minute and tell you what my thoughts are on that. Inflation is the enemy of our economy. And right now, we have a unique opportunity where interest rates, borrowing rates are so low. I would never encourage government borrowing, but in this situation, you've got a place where you could borrow it below the 10-year note average, below inflation, put that out to the counties and create an infrastructure bank. Other states are doing it. Ohio does a fantastic job of that. And that infrastructure bank is investing in things like nuclear energy and bridges and railroads and those types of things that would have generational return on investment. So I would love to see the Treasurer's Office step into that, and it would take cooperation from the legislature and from the governor. But that's where I would head, is to look to some major infrastructure investment. And right now, I would not hesitate one bit to go to the bond market and borrow at these historically low interest rates and leverage that money out and replace our taxing revenue with non-tax revenue coming off of these entities and working with our subunits.
All right, let's go to Tawny.
That's a great question. I've been able to meet with Kurt Slaw, who is the acting treasurer and traditionally is the deputy treasurer. And he had some really good insights about how the money is currently invested, especially the public funds. And he said we're currently getting, well, the last year we received 0.9% rate of return on our money, which is not keeping up with inflation. And so I think that that's definitely something that the treasurer needs to consider. I've also had the opportunity to talk and have Zoom meetings with 3 other state treasurers that were very conservative, and they, discussed some areas where they were investing to try and keep up with that inflation. So I think that we definitely need to consider that. Currently in the Utah Money Management Act, we're really limited. I think we only have 3 options, and currently it's in commercial paper mostly. And so I think that we would need to take it to the legislature and try and expand that list on where the Treasury funds could be invested so that we can at least get 3%, if not a higher rate of return, especially with how much the federal government is spending right now. Inflation's definitely a concern.
Thanks. And I know that minute goes fast. You guys are doing your best. If you need a little more, I'm flexible. I want you to feel comfortable getting your answers in, but we'll find the right balance between keeping them short and making sure you're able to answer. So let's go to Brian and then Chadwick.
Thank you very much. This modern monetary theory where we can simply print enough money to satisfy the needs of our economy just is not going to work long term. And we are already seeing the effects of inflation on our economy. And so simply the liberal thinking of just simply printing more money with inflation is not a good idea. I have heard that there are some states, and I believe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but Texas is looking at being able to take part of their portfolio, invest it in gold and silver. And as we know, sometimes that can be a hedge against inflation. And so we do need to think about other creative ways to help mitigate the very poor return that we are getting on our current funds that are held in escrow.
Thank you. Chadwick? You're muted. Let's get you unmuted there.
All right, there we go. Fantastic question, Lowell. I'm going to speak fast because there's a lot to say. So Phil is absolutely right. The US dollar is trash. It's going to zero. If you all remember, Hugo Stinnes is the inflation king. You go back to the Weimar Republic. He made a fortune borrowing the inflated dollars and buying hard assets, real assets, factories, railroads. I would advocate for real estate. So Phil's right there. We need to start borrowing as much money as we can from the Fed. Tawnee already hit on my point. The Money Management Act really dictates what the treasurer can do. Anybody can be treasurer. I just want to make that clear. But back to the question. So Texas, I will expand on Utah HB 317, the Legal Tenders Act, which not only exempted gold and silver from capital gains tax, but made it legal tender in the state. I've got a plan to actually create a payment network that we can start transacting in gold and silver. We, like Texas, can make we can lobby the legislature to create a gold and silver depository, a physical depository, not only for public funds, but for private funds. Ohio legislature, going back to some of the points that were made, Ohio legislature just passed legislation taking 10% of their pension funds and moving it into gold and silver. Texas has done the same for their pension funds. So to your question, Lowell, what can we do as a state with the treasury? We need to divest from any any investments that are denominated in US dollars. Utah needs to ditch them as fast as possible. We need to be buying equities. We need to be buying foreign currencies, maybe a little bit of foreign bonds, but dividend paying stocks, equities, gold mining stocks, for instance, would pay us many more multiples even than owning physical gold. But there's a lot we can do, and I'm excited to get in there and get after it.
All right, thanks. Great question, great answers. I'm looking for any of our other board members that may want to come on with a question. If any of you do, raise your hand or jump in. While I'm looking for you, I'm going to ask my question. This is one that I've had a chance to ask a couple of the candidates, but I haven't been able to ask each one of them. It's a little more of a political question. One thing I'm concerned about is that whoever we select is a good representative of our Republican values. And so sometimes we express what we believe in, but I like to see what people stand for by what they do. So we'll go in this order. We'll start with Tawnee, Brian, Chadwick, and then Phil, rotating through. Can you tell me one or two things that you have done that either recently or in your life that demonstrate your commitment to our Republican platform values? That's my question. So Tawnee, I'll start with you.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Larry. And I was going to mention, I do have a voting record as well, because I have, served on the city council and have been an elected official. You can see that I have been a proponent for personal property rights and have fought for those. But one other thing that is really shown is Utah was the first city in the state that passed a resolution in support of the unborn. And I know that it isn't related to the treasurer position or financial, but I think that it does go to show how passionate I am about the platform and the different initiatives. And since then, Utah County passed a resolution, several other cities within the state. And I think, at the time, some people were saying, is this the proper role for a city government? And I think it's important that each of us try and make a difference in our own realm or sphere of influence, that we stand up for what's right and stand up for these principles. And I am a hardcore Republican, and I know that these Republican principles is what will help Utahns and the country. And I do wish that they were followed more closely, especially the financial policies. Thank you.
Thanks. Brian?
Yeah, I've already mentioned my lifetime score of 100% as friend of the taxpayer. That was during my legislative service as senator. One of the most important things that I was able to do in my community, we saw a huge need for uninsured patients that weren't able to get health care. And those patients were being turned away from private clinics. And so we got this idea, why don't we start a nonprofit organization by which people could get basic health care without going to the emergency room to get their medications refilled? So that was the start of what's called the Utah Partners for Health. You can Google that, www.upfh.org. It's a nonprofit that's supported by physicians, businesses, and patients for a small copay. It takes the insurance company out of the whole equation so that if you have a basic healthcare need, you can get that healthcare need met in a private physician's office rather than in an emergency room, saving millions of taxpayer dollars. Very proud of that.
All right, thank you. Next up would be Chadwick. And you're muted again. We'll want to get you unmuted.
Thanks, Larry. I've got all those tiles up there. I just not clicking that button. So like Mike Green, I put my money where my mouth is, and I've sworn an oath to the United States Constitution to sacrifice my life for the Republic if need be. So if that doesn't speak to republicanism and conservatism, willing to die for the Republic, defending our God-given sovereignty and right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I don't know what does. But I will say this, I've ran for office multiple times. You know, I've ran against Rob Bishop when nobody else was wanting to campaign against him. Everybody always comes out for these open seats, but I'm a winter soldier. I'm a patriot all year round. I'm willing to say the hard truth and you know, give the tough love and say what needs to be said, even if it means I don't get elected. And I'm willing to challenge incumbents when nobody else is. Yes, I do come out and run for these open seats. But that's because I'm a hardcore conservative, and I'm dedicated to making the state and the country as good of a place as we can for the future of our children. I mean, I've got kids, and we all have a job as citizens, civic duty, to keep passing that baton and staying vigilant. Thank you.
Go ahead, Phil.
Okay, thank you. And such a great question, Larry. I appreciated Dr. Zehnder's comment earlier that the power to tax is the power to control. And I'm a CPA and I have a small practice. I'm in rural Utah. I help clients, seeing clients go from very small businesses to very large businesses. And the biggest challenge that we face, the biggest threat that we have is the federal government. And I don't care if we're talking about public lands or taxes or policies or inflation, all of these things, that the federal government is likely to sink the ship. And Utah, if we as you know, political leaders, if we don't step in to do what we can to protect people against that flood of inflationary policies and everything else, then why are we even in government? And I guess that's small government. Push things out to the counties, push things out to the city levels. That the government closest to the people governs best. People who are most affected by the policy should be the ones affecting those policies the most. And you know, this idea of centralized power in DC, that they know more than we do, it's just so wrong. And at some point, Utah will step up and say, you know what, we really are a sovereign state. The property within our boundaries is something that we're going to use for our benefit of our people. And I think I've shown that. You know, people in the end will judge us not for what we say, but for what we do. And I've got a track record of standing up to the federal government. I don't try to do it adversarially, but I will stand up for them, no matter what the cost. I will always stand up for my neighbors and my friends who I feel like are being harmed by federal policies.
All right, thanks each of you for answering my question. We got a couple more questions from the board, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. I'm just looking at the clock, and it looks like we're good on time. We got a lot of time here, and hopefully you got lots of good questions for these candidates. Because we only have 4 instead of 5, it's moving a little faster so than I anticipated. Tina, you've got your hand up. Tina Horlacher from Davis County has her hand up. She's one of our board members. And just so everyone knows, down at the bottom of your screen, there's a little reactions emoticon, I guess you could call it. And one of the things you can do is raise your hand. And if you do that, it'll put a little yellow hand in the corner like we see on Tina's and Matt's. And that's how I know that you have a question. And so we'll start, we can have those hands start popping up and they'll go in, I'll see them on my screen and I'll know who to go to for upcoming questions. So with that warning to those who want to ask questions, Tina, what's your question?
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate the opportunity. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here. I think this is a valuable opportunity for all of us. All right, so my question is basically, what is the role in relation to the governor and legislature that you foresee? What's the relationship there, and how can you influence both of those legislative bodies, the legislative body and the executive power, to choose more fiscally sound policies?
Great question. The order will go in will be Brian, Chadwick, Phil, and Tawnee on this one.
You know, that's such a great question. You know, in some states, the attorney general or perhaps even the treasurer or others are actually appointed by the governor. Whereas in Utah, we have what's called a kind of a fractured system where each of the bodies, the governor, the legislature, the attorney general, and the treasurer, they're all elected positions. And that really improves and gives cohesiveness to the state legislative system, so that not one entity or one person is basically calling the shots with selecting who they want to have fill those positions. So a representative government, the fracturing of the differences within and the roles in our executive leadership is a real strength for Utah.
Okay, go to Chadwick. And I'll remind you to, there you go.
I already unmuted. Get the hang of it. I'm just kidding. So that's a good question, Tina. Again, I'm gonna keep hammering this. Okay, the treasurer's office is a highly regulated position by statute. Okay, the investments have to be invested according to the Money Management Act. That's why the treasurer sits on 19 boards. Any decision regarding the money is made by committee. Okay, it's made by vote. Now the treasurer has to have financial acumen and investment, wherewithal, which I have in spades. But you're right, the treasurer is very hemmed in. He can take temporary custody of public funds under court order, but basically state law dictates. So a good treasurer will be an advocate and a lobbyist, so to speak, internally in terms of helping the governor set economic policy. I've already mentioned that. I will definitely continue in Mr. Damshin's footsteps in terms of lobbying my fellow legislators like he did to help defeat that 2019 tax referendum that was atrocious and horrendous. He did a good job there. I would do things like that. I will continue to do what Mr. Damshin and Mr. Dougal have done in visiting all of the counties in the state, particularly the rural counties like Sevier and Rich and Paiute. The only visitors they get from our state government have been Mr. Damshin and Mr. Dougal. So kudos to those gentlemen for doing that. And I will definitely continue in that vein and continue to lobby for the GOP platform as a member of the SEC and as a Republican, not only the governor, his advisors, his cabinet, but also to the legislature as well.
Phil, I think you're up, and then Tawnee.
Okay. Well, it's a great question again. I love the idea of federalism, different branches of government, checks and balances, and it is interesting in our state that the executive office is by election, not by appointment. So kind of as Chadwick mentioned, providing some lobbying and some efforts to educate and provide an alternative. I think the treasurer is in a great position to provide some alternatives, to lay out, this is what could be done, and to have the competence to crunch the numbers and demonstrate that, maybe there's a better way to do things. And then as I've seen with Dave Damshin, and who I have great respect for, he's very effective at, pushing the legislature to pass things that will make Utah a stronger state fiscally. And so the treasurer, when I first heard about this position, I thought, well, there's not a lot of influence in this position, but the truth is there is tremendous influence with the treasurer and all the boards that he sits on. Rural Utah is affected dramatically by the treasurer's decisions. So I think just providing those models and those plans and options to the state and working with the governor and the legislature, I think you can you could easily, you know, affect policy in a positive direction.
All right.
Tawnee, thank you.
Tina, I think that that's a great question, and it is really important that this person, you know, is going to work with the governor and the legislature. And no offense, Phil, but I think sometimes it's good if there is a little bit of tension between the governor's office, and it's almost like the checks and balances in the different forms of government, and even with the legislature. And there have been times in the past, even a few months ago, I heard that the governor was planning to continue to receive some federal funds to test our high school students to compete in sports and to attend dances and things like that. And that frustrated me a little bit. And as the treasurer, I probably would have picked up the phone and said, you know, even my daughter on the golf team, if every other Friday she wouldn't go in and get tested, then she wouldn't be able to compete in the tournament the following week. And so things like that, I think that it is good to have a working relationship with them, but you also need to have a backbone for times when you disagree with them. And I do believe that this position, it's so important that it's an elected position, because I think that it's not just appointed by the governor. It's there to represent the people. And I think that, you know, I was even able to talk to Howard Headley, the president of the Bankers Association. And one thing he mentioned that he wishes that David would have done a little bit different. He said that there was a need for small businesses to have 401ks for their employees. And instead of setting up some guidelines and some recommendations that some of the private providers could have followed to make this available, instead he decided to take those funds into the treasurer's office and for the state to offer that. And that was, you know, one area where the government was competing with the private businesses. And in situations like that, I don't think the treasurer should be trying to gain as much control as they can. They should really be working to represent the people and to be the voice of the people. Thank you.
All right, thank you, candidates. We appreciate you each answering that question. Matt, are you there? I've got Matt Bell, who is a member of our PAC board from Utah County. You had your hand up. Are you there, Matt?
Yes. I wonder if anybody's asked, what is the primary function of the state treasurer, and what is your life experience, work and life experience, that qualifies you for that job? 30 seconds each.
Okay, the order, we'll go back to our original starting point with Chadwick, Phil, Tawnee, and Brian on this one. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, Larry, so did I understand the question right? Did he basically just ask what the role of the treasurer was, or was there some more in depth to that?
What life experience do you have, or prepares you for the primary role of the treasurer? Is, I think, the biggest takeaway from that.
So correct. So I'm sure probably Matt missed my opening statements, but basically I went through the role of the treasurer as dictated by Title 67, Chapter 4. So it's a highly regulated position. The treasurer is not really doing anything unilaterally. And so when it comes to life experience, the most important attribute that the treasurer have is that he is a platform Republican, right? And will be advising those around him, those under his, again, the 19 boards that he's an ex officio member of. All of these decisions regarding managing the pension funds or the state treasury is going to be done by committee. And so as long as the treasurer is working from those presuppositions, right, that worldview of staunch, sound money, fiscal conservatism, American republicanism, that's the most important attribute the treasurer should have, because everything else is pretty much dictated for him. And I have the receipts to back up that my Republican bona fides over the last 5 years inside the state of Utah. You can go to my website, utahgopchadwick.com, to see the videos where I've said year over year in front of the SEC, in front of the whole state convention, as a federal candidate, in front of the delegation, constantly droning on these topics. Thank you.
Thank you. Phil, you're up.
Okay, thanks, Matt. I appreciate the question. You know, the functions of the treasurer, he's a banker, he's an investor, and he issues debt instruments. And so those things are definitely, you know, controlled by statute. I think beyond that, he has to be trustworthy. And I break that down into 3 categories, and that's to be honest and reliable and competent. So you have to have all 3 of those things to do that job well. I think a thing that should come into the dialogue is some innovation to look at the policies. You know, we're dealing in a new economy here with cryptocurrencies. I talked about the infrastructure bank, the opportunities that are out there. I think a treasurer in this position has to be, again, willing to step between federal policies that are failing and the citizens of Utah and try to protect those citizens and maintain the sovereignty of the state. And I think there's a huge opportunity to do all of those things as a treasurer.
Thank you, Tawny. You're up.
Okay, that's a great question. So I do, you know, we do know that the main job of the treasurer is sitting on these mini boards, you know, the Board of Canvassers, Preservation Board, Martha Hughes Cannon, Permanent Community Impact Board, School, and the trust funds and things like that. And I have served on a lot of different boards and commissions myself. I've already mentioned the Women in the Money, but I also serve on the Utah League of Cities and Towns on their board of directors and have helped, you know, try and pare back their budget a little bit, especially during years when cities have not been receiving as much in sales tax revenue. I've also sat on it's called the TRCC, Salt Lake County Board, and it stands for Tourism, Recreation, Community, and Culture. And with that board, one thing we found was within Salt Lake County, most of those TRCC funds and grants were being used up north and had been historically for a long time. So I was the first person on the board that was on the southwest side of the valley. And I not only felt like I was on that board representing myself, but I was representing the region. And so after I understood and was able to follow how they were giving out the funds, I went and met with the city leadership in Bluffdale and Harriman. And it went from none of our cities having ever received TRCC funds to last year they put it on hold, but the year before that, all 3 of the cities had received those funds, and it was their first time. And so I feel like, you not only have to represent yourself, but you have to represent, the good of your area. I also mentioned I was the Family Life Center director, and I know how important these boards are, and we need to have someone that is listening to the people and that is truly fiscally conservative, that is fighting to reduce taxes, reduce the size of the government, and give the money back to the people. And I will just say, I'm grateful that Utah is such a well-managed state. I'm grateful that we have the balanced budget amendment. And, even this last year, the fact that we had $1 billion surplus compared to states like California that had a $64 billion deficit. And it is so frustrating when the federal government will just step in and pay off their bills. And I think it's like they're benefiting or giving an advantage to the states that are not managing their money well. And I think that that's the wrong policy and the wrong example that we want to set. Thank you.
Thanks. Brian, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. I'll try to give you a very simple answer to your question. As we know, the Utah Treasurer acts as the head banker, managing deposits, withdrawals, and investments. What have I been doing for 28 years? I've been managing collections, expenses, and investments, making sure we have adequate cash on hand, that we have a strong balance sheet, and that we have money to invest in the future when we need to. I've been in the private sector doing this my whole career. It's a great opportunity to take what I've learned and apply it to the public sector. Thanks.
All right, thanks, candidates. Appreciate you working through the system here with us as I rotate and take these questions. We got another board member with the hand up. Aaron Bolin, also from Utah County. We appreciate Aaron's involved in a lot of great organizations and issues. So Aaron, what's your question?
Yeah, so I've spoken to a lot of you, and I guess I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to say, what they might do differently. I think we all have respect for the job that David Damson did, and we want to maintain all the good aspects of his tenure as the treasurer. But what would you improve upon? I'm an engineer by profession, and so I always like good, innovative ideas. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, but there's always room for improvement in my mind, and just wanted to get some of your ideas there.
Great question. The order will be Phil, Tawnee, Brian, and Chadwick on this one.
Okay, well, thanks, Aaron. Great question. Like you, I have huge respect for what Dave Damson has done. I guess if I had a critique or something that I think we could do better, is I think we could be a little bit more proactive in pushing control to our counties, to our subunits, and empowering them to make better decisions. I've always said all of the passion lies in the counties and all the resources lie at the state level, and sometimes those two never quite connect. I've been really involved with like the Utah Navajo Trust Fund, so I've seen Dave Damson come down and meet with people, and he is so active. The CIB Fund, I was the chairman of the 7-County Infrastructure Coalition, dealing largely with CIB funds. And what I experienced was kind of like this begging, this trying to pull some resources to the local counties where they could actually do some good, and having a little bit more resistance there than I would like. So I'd love to see the state treasurer's office take a proactive approach at pushing resources to those counties so that they can make those decisions that are going to be in the best interest of their people. And I'd love to, ultimately I'd love to see the state government, shrink and become more efficient and more administrative, and see our county government step in and do more. So I guess that'd be the one thing that I'd say.
Tawnee?
All right. I have really enjoyed having 5 different meet and greets throughout the state and traveling between Logan and St. George. And then last week I was able to do a rural loop where I was able to speak with SEC members in Nephi, Fillmore, Beaver, Junction, Marysville, Richfield, Barron, Elmo, Price, Vernal, Roosevelt, and then I ended up in Heber. And it was great. And I am so impressed with the SEC members and their commitment and service to the Republican Party. And so I thank them. And I also really enjoyed hearing about the different issues in all of the different areas of the state. And there are several ideas that I have. And I agree with Phil that we need to push some resources out to the more rural areas in the state, and especially over in Roosevelt and Vernal. They talked about how the change in the federal, the presidency, it goes from the coal and mining industries, from being robust to now, they're swinging the pendulum the other direction, and it's really hard on their economy. And I think that that's unfortunate. I agree that the federal government needs to push more of the decision making to the states. And as part of a city government, I wish that the state would push those decisions to the city. And serving on the city, I have tried to push the decisions to the individuals. And I think that that's important. A couple ideas that I have if I was chosen to be the state treasurer. As I traveled around the state, a lot of people talked about how frustrating it was when there is unclaimed property, how hard it is to get it back from the state. And I would definitely like to find ways to innovate that and streamline it and kind of to fast track it. And one idea I have is, instead of having individuals go to the state treasurer's website and type in their name and having them do the work, I would like to be more proactive and partner with the DMV. And when an individual goes in to renew their driver's license, they could have a notice, hey, you have $200 in unclaimed property, and we've already identified who you are. If we can give you a driver's license, then we know who you are. So it isn't going to require people to get all of their, documents notarized and scanned in. And when I was talking to Howard Headley, the Bankers Association president, he said that it is frustrating in the state of Utah where after only 3 years, the funds are pushed up to the treasurer's office. And even with my campaign account, I got a notice, and I'm up for election every 4 years, but I got a notice saying, you haven't used your account. And I hadn't changed address. I knew where my money was and I wanted it to stay there. And he said, especially when it's with elderly people and the funds are getting sent up there, he said, we know where they are. We've been sending them statements and communicating with them, so possibly even extending that time. But also I would like to consider establishing a 529 ABLE account. Utah is only one of 4 states that doesn't offer that for people with disabilities, and it allows them to save larger amounts of money without disqualifying them for SSI and Medicaid, things like that. I have a lot of ideas for things. I would like the high school financial literacy class to be a concurrent enrollment class so that students could get credit. Also, so that maybe the teachers were a little bit better prepared and passionate about the topic. I would also join the Conservative State Financial Officers Foundation to be able to network and collaborate with other state treasurers. And so I have a lot of ideas, but I'll try and stay to my minute. Thank you.
Thank you. We gave you a little extra there. So if the other candidates want to take a little extra, we'll forgive them too. So I've got Brian and then Chadwick.
Great. Thank you, Aaron, for your question. It's a very good one. I would anticipate that in the first 2 to 3 months, I would spend a lot of time just getting to know everyone within the office and talking with them in detail, getting to understand exactly how the department works and how it functions well together before making any decisions or recommending any changes. Remember, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, it will only be until November of next year when the general would be underway. Having said that, though, I did speak a great deal with the treasurer as well as other members of his staff and with the auditor about some things that may be a good idea to work on. And one of them is a debt review commission. Currently, that's a fairly perfunctory role served by the treasurer. And the treasurer recommended perhaps adding a little bit more oversight and involvement with other members of the legislature so that there's more accountability and transparency when it comes to bonding. The other thing, I think most of us know that, we as taxpayers are on the hook for about $460 million right now for charter school bonding. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's a tool that the Treasurer's Office has developed that will help the charter schools be a bit more accountable and transparent so that they understand what their financial strengths are. Jefferson Moss is in the process of trying to get a bill into the next legislative session that may codify this process. So that's something else that I would be interested in looking at and perhaps working on as the treasurer if I'm fortunate enough to be appointed. Thank you.
And Chadwick.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Aaron. That's a great question. It's going to be hard to fit some of that into 1 minute. There's a lot of things that the Treasurer's Office could do to innovate and be different. On Saturday, I will be talking about when it comes to cash and banking management systems, what the state can do to implement, like I said, a payment network that uses gold and silver as legal tender according to HB 317. I think with the market cap of cryptocurrency being almost $100 billion, I think the state could expand the exemption of capital gains taxes on gold and silver, expand that to crypto and try to bring some of that outside investment into Utah as well. That could be a very big deal. But I want to go back to the old school definitions of wealth, real wealth, like real biblical wealth, right? It's land, animals, gold, silver. But the latter three come from the first, right? It's land. So I will definitely be hammering HB 148. I have the relationships with folks needed to create the necessary envoys to lobby the federal government. For instance, Cecilia Hahn is the consulate to the Kingdom of Sweden. Very good relationship with her. She has a lot of connections in DC. She's also a corporate attorney and very well-versed in finances. She would be an awesome addition to the Treasury Office to help lobby DC to get our lands back. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we're sitting on uranium, we're sitting on copper, there's gold underneath our copper that Kennecott is mining. We've got the purest carbon coal in the world, the deposits. There's a lot of things we could do to increase energy production, but we got to get our lands back. I have a relationship with Dr. Nick Begich. I don't know if you are aware of him, his heritage. His dad was the congressman in Alaska. He helped create the Alaskan Resource Management System. I've been working with him to create a similar system for Utah once we get our lands back to efficiently manage those resources to create vast wealth for the state treasury and basically pay all Utahns dividends just like Alaskans get. Utah can do the same thing because we need to get creative in terms of our tax environment, right? We need to be able to reduce corporate taxes. Right now, President Biden at the G7 is trying to convince the world to do a minimum corporate global tax, right? So that no matter where a corporation goes, they're going to get taxed up the wazoo. But sovereign states like Utah could create tax havens, we could set up our state so that we could have an excess of wealth where we could have a very aggressive tax policy that would bring manufacturing, bring business, bring commerce. There's a lot of things we can do, and I'm excited to get after it. Thank you.
All right, great question, great answers. Time to open it up to the audience. Adlai's been waiting patiently. He's a new SCC member from my county. We welcome him. He's going to be a great addition to our central committee body. There you are. You're finally up, Adlai.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. My question is just a very simple one, but I feel like it is kind of telling. But my question to the candidates is: if you are not selected to be the treasurer, will you run against what would be incumbent this next November?
All right, very, very interesting question. The order would be Tawnee, Brian, Chadwick, and Phil for this one. So Tawnee?
Sounds good. I'll make up for my overtime on the last one and just say I would not be running if I'm not selected this time around.
Brian? Brian, I think you're up next. I've got Tawnee, Brian, Chadwick, and Phil on this one. And Brian, are you able to hear me? Looks like we might have lost.
I don't think he heard the question.
Larry. Brian, the question was, if you're not
I can hear you.
Are you there? Yeah, the question was if you're not appointed by the governor to this office, would you run next year for this office?
That's a good question. I have not even thought of that yet. It's very interesting because 6 months ago, I made the decision to sell my company. And so when this position came open, I thought, well, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. And so that's a really good question. Right now, this seems like the right time for me to be involved in public service. Would it be also the right time next November if I'm not fortunate enough to be selected? I don't know. I can't predict that at this point. But I'm glad to be involved right now.
I've got Chadwick and then Phil.
That's the best I could do on that one.
That's an interesting question. I alluded to that in one of my other answers when I was talking about this field of candidates running for an open seat. And going back to my conservative bona fides and my core ethos and my dedication to taking principled stands. So yeah, in 2018, I ran for Congress against Congressman Rob Bishop. I was the only one to run. And same thing in 2016. I think competition is healthy, right? Free market. We all agree that free market and competition is good in the marketplace in business, but it's also good in politics. It helps keep the incumbents honest, right? I mean, we need to make these guys sweat. In 2018, I told this SCC in 2018, why was Mia Love unchallenged? She was the worst representative out of the bunch and a horrible candidate, and yet she was unchallenged at convention. That's unacceptable. I told all of you that. There's a video. Again, I've got receipts for my conservatism. That video is on my webpage, Utah GOP for Chadwick. So yeah, my theory, my thesis is, going back to Adley, none of these candidates are going to show up next year. None of them. I haven't given it much thought as to whether I was going to switch gears. I'm from Park City. I've been focusing on District 1 at the federal level. But the federal government's pretty much gone, and we really need to hunker down on sovereignty as individuals to the lowest common denominator, which would be the state, and then the county, then the city. So I've kind of written off the federal government. There's no saving it in its current form. So I will go ahead and make the pledge right now to run for state treasurer in 2022 against whoever gets appointed. Thank you.
And Phil.
Okay, thanks, Adlai, for the question. And I have to say, right now I'm in the state legislature, and I've got District 73, which is all of San Juan, Kane, Wayne, Garfield, Paiute, Beaver, and a little bit of Sevier counties. It's the greatest district in the nation, I think, with some of the most beautiful land and the best people. And I don't think I would give that up to run for the state treasurer. This one was an opportunity. All I've ever wanted to do is be a good citizen and protect my neighbors and my friends. If I ran for state treasurer, I would have to give up my spot with the legislature, and I probably would not be inclined to do that. That said, if I thought the person in the treasurer's office was doing a poor job, I probably would be inclined to, as Chadwick said, at least put in a candidacy to make them answer for their questions. I always like to bring rural issues to the table. I like Utah to talk about rural issues. I think it is the hope of the state. I do want to say one thing about Tawnee. I don't know Tawnee extremely well, but I do know her husband, Senator McCay, and if she can manage Senator McCay, she could manage this office very well. If she was the treasurer, I guarantee I would not run against Tawnee. And huge respect for all those who throw their name in for these positions and any office, and for all of you on the committee. It does my heart really good. And when I talk to a group of committee members like you, I know I'm talking to people who are not passive in their politics, and hopefully I earned the reputation of not being passive in my politics. But anyway, so I'll leave it at that.
All right, thanks each of you for that. That was an interesting question, gives us good insights. So thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll go to closing so that we can wrap up in time for the next section of candidates. So does the audience, the body here, does somebody want to raise their hand and give us a final question? If you put your little yellow hand up, or just start talking, but be sure to unmute. Okay, I'm not seeing any yellow hands up, so this is what I'm going to do. It's 10 after. I'll give you up to 3 minutes each to make your closing statements. This will be your final pitch. Why should we, those who are on the State Central Committee, vote for you Saturday morning? And continuing our rotation, I'm going to start with Dr. Z, Brian, and then we'll go to Chadwick, we'll go to Phil, and Tawnee gets the honor, ladies last instead of first on this final statement. So Brian, up to 3 minutes, your final statement.
Thank you very much. We've talked about business. We've talked about our common shared values. Let's talk about our children. As a child who attended a Title I school, I know what it means to go without, to have limited finances. Today, I love to teach others about physical and economic prosperity. So how can we build a legacy for our children? Number one, invest wisely in the permanent endowments of our school trust funds. 2, support Utah schools who deserve the best borrowing rates available, protecting our AAA credit rating. And finally, encourage prosperity thinking. Not only do we need to teach about finance, life motivation, and deep passion. You deserve a treasurer who knows business, shares your conservative principles, and invests in our children. our future leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for being with us tonight. Chadwick, you'll be next.
All right, thanks, Larry. Ladies and gentlemen, the financial markets are broken, okay? The bond market is broken, the stock market is broken. The Fed has clearly wrecked the dollar, the economy. Inflation is going to get out of control. Utah is in a prime position to get ahead of this and to become a national leader, essentially as a sovereign entity. And I think the next treasurer could play a very crucial role in helping the governor and the legislature set the state up for success and thereby set up Utahns for success. I believe I'm the only candidate out of the 10. Again, we're going to get to choose 3 names to send to the governor. I believe I should be one of those 3 based just solely off the receipts. I have the receipts of being conservative and being a platform Republican. And the other 9 candidates, just they don't have those receipts. And so it would be reckless to not send a true Republican to the governor for selection. And so I would just like to reiterate the fact that the treasurer's office, again, is more of a figurehead management leadership position, which I'm well versed and well skilled at. And I think I'd make an excellent treasurer. And I look forward to innovating. There's a lot of things we can do, but we definitely need to change up the mixture of the investments. The state definitely needs to get its land back. We need to get into commodities and equities. We need to get out of the U.S. dollar. I mean, hell, we should start having conversations about starting our own bank and our own currency. I mean, we're sitting on enough wealth where we can do that. And so it's definitely time for a paradigm shift. It's definitely time to start having different conversations, but also continue what has worked, in terms of, look, the Wasatch Front is crowded, where everybody is retreating here from California, from the West Coast. We have water problems right now. We're going to have electricity problems. We already have land problems. I'm a real estate investor. I mean, there is no more industrial land really much left in the front. So rural Utah is going to come to the forefront. We need to start investing in rural Utah. But basically, we really need to take a look at all of our policies and make some huge paradigm shifts in order to accommodate a very prosperous and wonderful future for the state. So I'm excited to be competing for this role. Thank you.
All right, Chadwick, thank you for being with us tonight. Let's go to Phil for your closing statement.
Okay, well, first of all, I should probably clarify when I mentioned Senator McCay, Dan is one of my true heroes, and has supported me in some things some difficult things that I was going through. So I didn't want to say managing Dan was a negative thing. I'm just saying Tawnee does a good job of that, and I really appreciate all that the McCays have done. That said, I'm a rural candidate. I'm born and raised in rural Utah. I've dealt with the issues of the federal government. When I looked at the opportunity zone map that Utah created, it looked like some really intelligent design on the Wasatch Front. And this opportunity zone was huge. It's driven investment across the state. And you get down south of the Wasatch Front, and for example, all of Carbon County is in an opportunity zone except for Price. You get down to Grand County, all of Grand County is in an opportunity zone except for Moab. It's like, and you go up into Salt Lake, and across the street from the Vivint Arena Center is opportunity zone. And I've started calling them zones of missed opportunity in southern Utah. And why is that? Well, it's because Paiute County doesn't have an economic development department, and the state has an obligation to look after its members. We're all one body with many members, and some of these members need a little bit more help, a little bit more attention. And what tends to happen is that the resources keep flowing to the areas that are already hot economies. We get congestion, we get the problems of urbanization, and I love Salt Lake City. I love the capital city. I'm a graduate of the University of Utah, and I love that town. But I see the problem of urbanization in Utah and the benefits that could come from building some bridges and some roads and some nuclear power plants and some railroads. So I really want to see that. I really want to see that happen. And I guess at the end of the day, as far as being a conservative, you know, Ralph Waldo Emerson, he talked about people that he cared about, honest people. He said, I'd go to jail for those kind of people. And I would go to jail for the kind of people that I care about. When I see my neighbors trampled on, when I see injustice, when I see things happen, I think, you know, I don't care what the cost is of this. And I'm not a militant. I'm not a protester by nature, but I don't like injustice. I don't like to see Utah trampled on. We are a sovereign state. We have been since 1896. And I think it's time that we start acting a little bit more like that. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Phil, for being with us tonight. And our final closing statement will be from Tawnee McCay.
All right, I just wanted to tell the platform Republicans how much I appreciate having the opportunity to meet with everyone. And I sure enjoyed meeting with so many people and traveling throughout the state. And it's been a real privilege. And I thought maybe I should just add, the reason I wouldn't run again was because I feel like you SCC members are my people. I feel like you are more conservative than the average Republican, and I'm definitely more conservative than the average Republican. And so I feel like if I can't get your support and the governor's, then maybe it's not meant to be. But I do hope to earn everyone's report. I've really also enjoyed talking to 3 other state treasurers and hearing some ideas that they're doing in their state. And it's really made me realize that the state treasurer position could be a lot more than it is. And we would never want to be in the paper or the news for anything negative, for mismanagement of funds. But we could be in the paper for innovative ideas, for saving money, for getting people their tax dollars back sooner or their unclaimed property. And I've enjoyed, you know, talking to Richard Ellis and Kurt Slaw and even Howard Stevenson. You know, when we were down in St. George for my meet and greet down there, we were able to meet with him and discuss some ideas. And he just reached out to me today and said, how can I endorse you? What can I do to help? And, you know, he was the president of the Taxpayers Association for years. And I appreciate his support and others. But I am a lifelong Republican. I will try and secure the God-given rights and freedoms of all individuals. And I will fight for tax relief and small government. And I understand that what one person receives from the government that they didn't work for, another person has to work for without receiving that. And I am against that. And I feel like we need to have a strong treasurer in place that will stand up and be the voice for the people, and will put a little pressure on the legislature and on the governor to make sure that we are, you know, controlling our spending and being fiscally conservative. And I think also the treasurer's position could do more to help financially educate the residents throughout the state. I think it's heartbreaking that especially in such a well-managed state, and so many of my friends and you that I've met, I feel like do a good job with their money management. And so it makes me wonder, why do we still have the 3rd highest bankruptcy rate in the country? Why do we have the 3rd highest credit card debt? And so I feel like that there's some things that the treasurer could lead out on to set a good example for the rest of the state and try and educate individuals. And I will use my experience and my, you know, retirement planning experience and investing experience. And you know, I've heard opportunity zones mentioned, and I agree that there's a lot that we need to do in our state to reach out to those rural communities and even the inland port and things like that to help those people. But I will fight for the individual taxpayers and do everything I can to make sure that our state government is ran fiscally conservative and for the benefit of the people. Every decision that I make as treasurer will be for the benefit of the people. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
All right, thanks again. Thanks for everyone that attended this session. We'll take a short break now, and we'll start up again at 7:30 with a new group of 5 candidates, and maybe some of the same questions and maybe some new ones. So thank you again for those who attended, and we'll see you in a few minutes.